Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how CEOs, founders, and senior executives sell their ideas, point of view, and personal brand to the people who matter most. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want to build market eminence, amplify your influence, and attract high-value prospects, investors, partners, talent, and media opportunities with less chasing and more confidence. Let's go. Well, my friends, you are in for a treat. We have a returning guest, one of my favorites, because, of course, only my favorite guests get to be returning guests. Mr. Bob Gentle from the Amplify Me agency. Welcome back to the show.
I'm so excited, and I'm terribly flattered to be a favorite.
Yes.
Icon on the toolbar there.
If nothing else, we're just the Handsome Bald Man Club.
Absolutely.
That's all we got to do. So, as I mentioned right before we turned on the recording, our first conversation was so rich and so deep and so fantastic. And in case you missed it, I will link to it in the show notes right below this episode, so you can catch up on all the Bob Gentle fabulousness. But I thought for this conversation, because you work, as I do, with a lot of consultants and coaches and experts and entrepreneurs who are in some sort of professional services business. And there seems to be sort of some stages and phases of an expertise-based business where in the early stage or the beginning stage, there are a series of appropriate strategies, tactics, tools, etc. In the middle phase, different. And then in the more advanced phase, different yet again. And one thing that frustrates me, and I'd love your take on this, is when someone looks for an answer that is not stage or phase appropriate. So a beginner tries to jump 17 steps ahead. A more advanced person tries to go back to what used to work 3 years ago because that's their comfort zone. How do you see that manifest in your client base?
Well, I think I always look at it, I often use a music analogy or a sports analogy. And if you were an Olympic skier, or if you wanted to learn to ski, you're not going to train like an Olympic skier. It's a completely different part of the game. And I think, so marketing is a double-edged sword. We as marketers are guilty of telling everybody, we're the most important musician in the orchestra. You ask a search engine marketing guy who's the most important musician in the orchestra, you know what he's going to tell you. So it's very difficult for the average business owner, consultant, or expert to be able to discern what is the right thing in the right place at the right time. So it's always going to be difficult. But as an initial compass, I look at what does healthy look like. And I remember looking up data from McKinsey and EY in terms of how opportunity comes into a healthy consulting business. And they came up with 65-70% is going to come through your existing relationships. Something like 25%, and I promise you these numbers will not add up to 100, 25% through content and content marketing.
Yeah.
Then it was something like 10 or 15% what they would call outreach. So these are people you don't know yet.
Yeah.
And then there was a tiny sliver of ads. And the compass for me should indicate our activities and our outputs should be proportionate relative to those percentages.
Yeah.
And if it's not, and if somebody's telling you it shouldn't be, you need to be looking at them carefully. I correlated that data from the big consulting firms through HubSpot's own data and through smaller consultants. And the reason I looked at this was I wanted to know, am I doing this wrong?
Yeah.
Because I've got all these people shouting webinars, ads, and I'm looking at, well, I don't do those things. Am I missing something? So if you've already properly, exploited, if you've properly harnessed the power of your network, if you are very active and content is working for you, and if you're already having some form of outreach, then perhaps you will look at ads. So within each of these strands, there are different strategies and tactics. I don't know if I've answered your question. Is that helpful?
No. Well, and I also I think the last time we spoke, the resource that you shared that is in the show notes that people can still go and get, and I'll link to it at the bottom of this episode as well as the previous episode, is the Personal Brand Business Roadmap. And that is, it's like 25 different things that are stage and phase appropriate, starting with personal brand foundations, building out your authority network, discoverability, your suite of products and services, and then your sales process and scaling strategies. And there's many stages and phases and milestones in each of those big, broad areas. I want to talk about two specific cases which are kind of fun, and I think will get people thinking differently, or how to think about these things, which is really important. Let's talk about, we're going to call him Beginner Bill. Beginner Bill, first year or two of his business. Maybe he's cracked the 100K per year ceiling, maybe not, but smart person, resourceful person, does have deep expertise, maybe a corporate refugee, just left a corporate job, hung out a shingle as a consultant. The person they admire, and you mentioned webinars, so we'll go with that for a second. The person they admire does a lot of webinars and has hundreds or thousands of people on each webinar. And here's Beginner Bill, and he says to you, Bob, I want to get into webinars. And you might say, well, Bill, or you and I might both say to this poor sap, Bill, how big is your mailing list? And he goes, excuse me, how big is my what? How big is your email list, your email database? Oh, I haven't started an email database. I figure the webinar will build my email database, and off we go into crazy land. How do we take Bill, Beginner Bill, who is very focused on a tactic, and bring him back into where he really needs to be, which is, let's build a foundational strategy before we grab for the bucket of tactics?
So if I come back to most of our work as an early stage consultant or expert is going to come through our existing relationships.
Yes.
The problem most of us have is that for the majority of our network, we're locked away in long-term memory. And the primary function of our content marketing initially, and probably for a very long time, is going to be hopping back into short-term memory. The more often we do that, the more persistence we have in short-term memory. We're literally top of mind at that point. So if I look at something like a webinar for Amy Porterfield, the crown princess of the webinar,
yes,
it's a direct scaling tool. For somebody like me, if I were to run a webinar, it's an opportunity to be seen as a leader and to be seen as a teacher. Even if nobody comes to my webinar, I would look at it primarily as a content marketing tool. And in that,
yes,
it can be quite useful. It's a point of difference. It will catch people's eye and their curiosity. And it gives you an opportunity to say, this is who I am and what I do. Similarly, I'm very conscious that this is not for fresh meat. This is to reposition me and reactivate my existing network. It's going to be friends and family that come, and that's got to be okay. Alongside that, if we imagine the sales funnel, we have top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. I like to think of it as far horizon, in a little bit closer, getting to build some rapport. It's an opportunity for people to come in out of the distance and come into your living room, spend a bit of time, and get to know, like, and trust you. And then they're far more likely to be nurtured towards a client relationship. So it's not that webinars are necessarily unproductive at the early stage. For me, it's more a case of they occupy a different space.
So compartmentalizing and making sure that whatever compartment you're in is safe, secured, and locked down before you go to the next step or before you go to the next stage.
Well, I think that's something that we didn't mention is a lot of people, when they, for example, leaving corporate, they are unaccustomed to category design. And what are you going to be known for? Most people will hedge. Well, I could do this, I could do that. And the problem is you end up doing nothing.
Yes.
Everybody needs to be super clear. My friend Bill, he's the guy to go to for this thing. And that's quite challenging, because if you've been a corporate guy, you might have run a department, but your friends and family probably have no idea what you did. Your extended network, I often look at a network, it's built through a process of accretion, like coral on a reef. And it's a lot of layers that reflect the business and the professional we used to be. Doesn't actually tell anybody what we do right now. So we need to go through that process of re-education for our network.
Yeah.
And that's really uncomfortable because it requires repetition. And people get very self-conscious about repeating themselves.
Yes.
Repetition is your friend. Number one, you need to know who you are, and you need to be comfortable with a leadership role. I do this thing unapologetically. You'd be amazed how hard declaring yourself as an unapologetic expert in a thing is for a lot of people. Imposter syndrome screams, and comparison, and well, there's all these other people doing this. They've been doing it for many years. You have to do it anyway. So yes, declaring yourself, I'm the guy who does the thing, and repeating that again and again and again,
yes,
is outrageously important.
Quick public service announcement. Did you know, in addition to being a charming and wonderful podcast host, I also work with clients privately? Book your Market Eminence Roadmap call right now at doitmarketing.com/call. Here's what we'll do. It's 30 minutes. We're going to get clarity on exactly where you are with 3 key strategies: differentiation, positioning, and pricing. Build your personalized roadmap for market eminence. Identify bottlenecks and gaps that have gotten in the way, and discuss next steps to help you make it happen. That's doitmarketing.com/call. Now, back to the episode.
I think the problem that people have with that is they get bored with their own message or their own content far before their audience does.
I think a challenge there, well, something I repeat a lot is you need to be quite 3-dimensional. In fact, you need probably 6 dimensions. And I'll tell you a story. Todd Herman. I love Todd Herman. I've read his books. Imposter Syndrome not Imposter Syndrome, The Alter Ego Effect by Todd Herman. If you're self-conscious online, read The Alter Ego Effect. 8 years ago, I was a huge Todd Herman fan. I knew where he went on holiday. I knew what his kids looked like. I knew what the inside of his apartment looked like. I knew he'd torn his Achilles heel and he had a little blue scooter for going around New York. I knew Todd Herman. And then one day he's standing in front of me and I'm paralyzed. I think this is such a strange experience. I know Todd Herman really well. He has no idea who I am.
Yeah.
And he'd done this because he provided enough raw material for my imagination to fill the gaps. He created a scaffold for my imagination. So if you're feeling like you're being repetitive online, or you're getting self-conscious about it, it's probably because you're being one-dimensional. It's all business. But there's no, this is what I do for fun, and this is what I'm reading, and this is what inspires me.
Yes.
A broader canvas, which will mean that, yes, you're being repetitive at the same rate, but there's more for people to use to build that parasocial relationship.
You know, I look at people online who share things like they're coaching their kids' little league. They're going on vacation somewhere fantastic. And I have 2 reactions, right? One is as a consumer and one is as kind of a marketer / competitor. I'll give you the ugly one first. As a marketer / competitor, I'm like, oh, that is so good. That is so, I'm so envious. That's so smart. Look, they're sharing themselves as a 3-dimensional human being. I wish I did more of that, right? And so that's one brain. With the other brain, as a consumer like you with Todd, I'm like, that is so cool. Wow, it would be great to go there. I think my family would love that. My kids would probably have fun. Man, this is awesome. Look, and oh, here's his shrimp tacos. Those shrimp tacos look amazing. That's so much fun. And so at once, I'm a fanboy and I'm also this sort of green envy monster. And the only thing I'm not doing is doing what that, but I'm not following that model. Right. So I'm the guy who's guilty of business. I see these people share themselves as three-dimensional human beings on vacation with their spouse, going out to dinner. They bought a new watch, or they love this new kind of breakfast cereal, or they're sharing just whatever. They're reading this cool new business book like The Alter Ego by, is it The Alter Ego Effect?
Yeah, The Alter Ego Effect.
Alter Ego Effect, exactly. And it's one of these things where if I just slow down and I look at the people that are doing, again, stage and phase appropriate, I was like, why? So rather than envy or, well, I see the strategy behind that. I can see the puppet master behind the puppets. Go to your consumer brain and go to that level of enjoyment. And what you're talking about is intimacy and familiarity and approachability, and start doing some of that yourself. I'm really speaking to myself here, Bob. That's why I've done 500 plus episodes of this podcast, so I can learn something from my amazing guests like you. But, rather than resent it, or rather than kind of point your finger going, I know what's going on, if it affects you as a consumer in a positive way, think about what lesson can I learn from that, or what action step can I take from that? It's really good.
There's a couple of things to pull out of that. The traditional funnel where you have top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, or the attention, interest, desire, action. I really dislike that because it's very hard to have an emotional relationship with.
Yeah.
What it means is if you're a marketer like you and I, you think about content in terms of persuasion and manipulation and cause and effect.
Yes.
I like to think it in terms of mission, match, and money. At the top of the funnel, I'm focused on mission. What can I do to be of service? And it's a different emotional lens to come to content with. And there's alongside this, I looked at what drives referrals, because I get referrals from people all over the world that I've never met. When you boil it all down, if you think about anybody you referred in the last 12 months, there's one reason you referred them. It's because at some level they mattered to you. That's it. So if you want to really build a referral business, which we know for that 65% we do, our job is to matter to people. If we can matter to people at scale, then we have a business. Yeah. And I think this is what the content layer for me and being of service is about. It's about mattering to people. Alongside this, we like to think of ourselves as rational, clever, intelligent people. And there are many more rational, clever, intelligent people than me in the world. But the majority of us don't actually act in that way. We act subconsciously, impulsively most of the time. And the subconscious only pays attention to a few things. It pays attention to itself, what matters to itself, symbol, color, emotion, and glamour, status. These are the things it really pays attention to. And there's a hidden power in the ordinary when it comes to glamour and status. I have a friend who lives in Hawaii. He's a coach. Every time he posts an Instagram reel, I'm just triggered and I'm jealous. And I think, I wish I lived there. He's so glamorous.
Yeah.
He came to visit me in dirty, cold, rainy Scotland. He thought he had arrived in fairyland. What's ordinary to you is amazing to other people. Yeah. And the truth is, for the average consultant or somebody in the expert space, it's short-sighted to think that your business is all going to be in your city. It just isn't. I'm as likely to have a client in Dubai or Tulsa. In fact, I'm more likely to have clients in those places than I'm in my own city.
Yeah.
And lean in to the everyday in your own city because it's only ordinary for you. It's an opportunity. Your local competitors will look at you and think, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Everybody else will be mesmerized.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we've straightened out beginner Bill. Let me jump to senior Sam, which could either be Samuel or Samantha. I'm good either way. But senior Sam, great body of work, is probably maybe 3/4 or more through the personal brand business roadmap. They've written a book. Maybe they've written several books. They have a healthy speaking calendar. They've got a good client base. They have all sorts of amazing lead magnets. They are doing the personal with the professional, right? They matter to people. And these folks, as successful as they are, they may even have a small team or a big team. They can suffer from, let's do what used to work in the past, right? Let's do another webinar. Let's do another 3-day event. Let's do a big launch around our new course. And it will have been their 17th 3-day event. It will have been their 21st launch. And it's just kind of going back to the old tired playbook, whereas the opportunity for senior Sam probably lies elsewhere, which is a much larger canvas to play on with things like licensing or certification or somehow propagating their intellectual property. What would you say to senior Sam when they're coming to you and saying, well, Bob, I've got a couple different things that I could do. We could do another 3-day event. We could do another big launch, or we could do another big JV partnership and activate all of our past joint venture people and drive a whole bunch of new leads into our new program. What do you think I should do? And this person is 60 plus, multiple best-selling books. Like I said, they're 3/4 or maybe even 80% through the roadmap. Tell me how to elevate that person's view to a stage and phase appropriate set of strategies and what they should really be focused on to launch into their next chapter.
Well, it's a very complex question for a start. And there will never be a one size fits all.
Sure.
The very first thing I would want to do is understand what is still working. Because if something's working, I don't want to go stamping all over it and suggesting something different.
Of course.
If something has been working and they're maybe just seeing diminishing returns, I'd look at optimization. Where are the gaps? Where are the leaks? Most people, you'll recognize this, things were built, they kind of worked, but they were built by accident a lot of the time.
Yes.
So bringing intention into something that just works can really make a big difference. Intellectual property at that level, there's almost always new ways to monetize it, but they don't want to be monetizing by spending more time. They want to be monetizing by multiplication.
Yes.
And licensing is always a good approach. I remember speaking to Mike Michalowicz, and I asked him what's the biggest lesson he learned from writing his first book, because he's written a dozen books now.
Yeah.
And he said, the mistake I made with the first book was there was no licensing model in it. Now he begins every book with the licensing model. He probably already has a partner in place to deliver it if the book's a success.
Yeah.
Before the book's even launched. And that, Mike is a smart cookie. So I look at what he's doing because he's always got his eye over the horizon. That's another thing I would look at is there are universal principles in business. And just because the kids are telling you there's this new thing doesn't mean you should be looking into it or jumping into it rather, but you should be looking into it. One of the hallmarks of somebody who's going to thrive is a growth mindset. And along with the growth mindset goes being a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
And looking at what are innovators doing? Not necessarily what's trendy, but what's on the way up the innovation curve that I should be looking at in order that I'm not left behind. I would be running experiments rather than radical change. I sense that I'm hedging in all of these answers. But for somebody who's built their business up to the top half of 6 figures, you want to be cautious, but you also want to be adventurous. And I would be setting aside budget to experiment, budget to bring in bright people and ask them, what should I be exploring? I'm avoiding, obviously, saying, well, AI, chatbots, build an app. There's a million ways to exploit your intellectual property on the personal brand side of things. And this is actually the really interesting one. Have you heard of this idea of the Dream 100?
Yes.
So one of the things that is universally true is opportunity only ever comes to us through other people. And if you want to see a distinct change in opportunity, yes, strategy and tactics come into it, but also people.
And Bob, just for the sake of our listeners, could you just give us 2 sentences on what Dream 100 is? Because I do know what it is, but they might not.
So there are different interpretations of it, but the way I approach it is make a list of classically 100 people. For me, it's a list of maybe 10 or 20 people who, in the normal run of things, you don't have a snowball's chance in hell of spending time with. But these are the kind of people that if you knew them and they knew you, life would look different. Opportunities that you experience would be different. Fancy friends provide fancy help.
And it's not necessarily prospects. It could be, like you said, partners, alliances, people that promote you, you promote them, that kind of thing.
It's people who are operating at a completely different level. And when you get to know them, you get insight into what drives them. You get insight into how they make decisions.
Yeah.
You get insight into what's actually working for them rather than a lot of the time, what are they promoting?
Yes.
They're often not the same. And essentially, by putting them on a list, we're allowing our intention to come to bear. The subconscious has a part to play. Depending on your perspective, there's aspects of the unseen world can go to work, and the world rises up to meet you. But it begins with putting these people on a list and looking for opportunities to be of service in very small ways. And what goes around comes around. This has been huge for me. It's a difficult thing to understate, and it's very easy when you're at the top of you. When you sense you're at the top of your game, I don't need other people. That's when you need other people. And it begins with you. It's not about what can I get from people. It's who do I need to spend time with and be of service to in order that the universal law of reciprocity can come to bear. And it won't necessarily be direct. It's a bit of a woo answer.
No, I think it's great. And I think when people do reach a senior, going back to Senior Sam for a second, it would be easy for Senior Sam to be either arrogant or complacent and just reach for the next tactic, throw another log on the fire, and keep grinding away at what has worked, but ignore things like, who's the level 10 person that is on my Dream 100? What kind of licensing, like you mentioned, Mike Michalowicz, what kind of licensing or certification program could I put in the hands of others, not to enrich myself, but to help them and to give them a tool set that they could go then and be of service to others? And I think that's very on point. That's very on point.
There was one other thing I was going to say. There are a couple of quotes, and I can't fully attribute them. One of them was Zig Ziglar, where he said, if you want to attract wealth, and I know that's not what he actually said, then you need to be looking for ways to be of greater service.
Yes.
And you can have everything you want in the world if you'll just find ways to help enough people. I think it was something along those lines.
Yes, totally.
And I can't remember the other one. It'll probably come back up as soon as you start talking.
I do have that effect on people. It's funny. I'll be on a client call, and perhaps you've had this experience also. I'm on a client call, ranting, pontificating, answering their question in brilliant, in-depth detail. And they're like, David, while you were talking, this thought occurred to me, which means they were not listening to me at all. They were just in their own little internal process. But hey, whatever it takes to get that thought out of them, I'm happy to rant and pontificate as long as it takes. That's my job here as the host of this show.
Wait. We're not just going to listen to this episode. There are downloads, there are resources, there are links, there are bonuses waiting for you on this episode's page when you go over to doitmarketing.com/podcast. That's right, doitmarketing.com/podcast. Grab the notes right under this episode. See you over there.
Let's talk about other people. Because as I'm looking at, I've got the roadmap up here in front of me because it's such a brilliant piece of IP. Other people come into play with Dream 100. Other people come into play with collaboration. Other people come into play with guesting. Other people come into play with strategic partners and affiliates and a couple other places. Talk to us about non-salesy relationship building. Because when I talk to a client, and I'm sure you've had the same experience, about relationship building, they come back with, David, great idea. What do I sell them? And I was like, oh my God. Relationship building is you helping them, you being of service to them, you coming, you commenting or sharing or tagging, or it can be microscopic, it can be a micro dose of getting on this person's radar. But when we say, hey, build these relationships so that you're doing this with your Dream 100 potential podcast hosts, potential affiliates, potential strategic partners, potential places where you might be invited to their mastermind, onto their stage for a speaking opportunity. What does non-salesy, non-selfish relationship building really look like?
Let's just imagine I am intentional about sales for a moment. I decide, and it needs to begin with a decision. I think you would be a good client for me. Now, the way I would approach that is I just want to drop a seed into the ground today. But I don't want to just drop the seed into the ground and walk away. I want to drop the seed and put in a little stick to say, I planted a seed. And that putting them in a little stick next to the seed is putting them in my CRM, where I say, I've decided this is somebody I want to pay attention to. And the first thing we want to do is nurture that seed, cultivate it. We can't harvest something until we've cultivated it. And different plants grow at their own pace. So step one is plant seeds, put them in your CRM, and now we're going to water them. And the way I would approach this is, let's say you were on my prospect list. I might once a week pop into LinkedIn and say, what's David posted? Oh, he's posted that. Like. Walk away. No pressure. I might make a couple of comments. I might send you a resource. I might introduce you to a friend who I think would be great for your podcast, or you'd be great for his podcast. I'm looking for opportunities to be of service. I want you to associate me with positive feelings. I want you to think that Bob's a nice guy. And in an ideal world, at some point, you're going to look at my content. And you're going to go, oh, he does that. And then at some point, my ideal situation is you're going to message me and say, hey, Bob, I'm quite intrigued by what you do. Could we have a chat? That for me is the plant basically falling in, the apple's fallen from the tree. Now, that is a sales approach that on the one hand I like, but it's very passive. You can walk into the orchard and apples will fall into the tree. If you walk into an orchard in October, you can hear the apples falling. But we can also get a ladder and we can go up the tree and say, David, I like the cut of your jib. I've got this thing. I think it would be great for you. Could I possibly show you? And you might say, yes, I'm intrigued. I would be interested in that. My most common sales strategy is I'll message somebody, I'll say, I've got this personal brand business roadmap. I'd love to get on a call with you and run you through this process. using your business as a lens. I think you would get a lot out of it. I always get a lot out of it. And full disclosure, sometimes people turn into clients, but that's not my goal. Would you be up for it?
So this is after the planting the seeds, after the relationship, after the comment threads, after all of those things.
In an ideal world, we will have had conversations long before that happens. Most of the time, people get there first. If it was...
Because that's a huge key part of this. That what you just said is that is not the first contact. What really irritates me, and I'm sure it bugs you too, it's the connect and spam people on LinkedIn, where you get a connection request at 10 a.m. and then by 2 p.m. they say, hey, Bob, I don't know you from Adam or Eve, but I have this thing. I think it would be great for you. Let's hop on a call and talk about it. You're like, who is this guy?
So we come back to 65% of opportunities going to come from people who already know you.
Amen.
So if this is somebody who already knows you, all we're trying to do is reactivate conversation. Oh, that's my friend Bob. Back in short-term memory.
Yeah.
If they're a potential client, put them on a list. It's going to be quite easy. Say, hey, Bill, we haven't spoken for ages. I'd love to get on a call and see what I can do to be of service to you. What can I do to light you up?
Yeah.
On that call, it would be very, very rude of Bill not to say, hey, David, what is it you do? I'm mixing the names up. And at that point, you can pivot into, well, I can show you if you'd like. If it's somebody you don't know, this is where we're doing the active outreach side of things. We want to take our time. And I think the problem the market has, people like you and me, David, is there's a whole industry talking about direct outreach as the way. It's not. Direct outreach will kill your business faster than anything else. I have never sent anybody a direct message to pitch them or to try and get them on a sales call because it never works.
Yeah.
What we want. So I am 90% of the way through a book. The book is called The Generosity Engine. And it's all about how we can have proactive outbound sales, but coming from a place of giving. So I want to give you something you really want, something you really value. And as a byproduct, we're going to start a conversation. In that conversation, I will ask you permission. Can I tell you about what I do? And that generosity engine, that conversation, it could be, I'd like to speak to you about research for a book. It could be a podcast. It could be one of half a dozen different devices. But it begins from the premise of, I am quite genuinely, not manipulatively, looking for an opportunity to showcase you. That has primacy. As a byproduct, I may ask you for permission to tell you about what I do, but that's it.
Yeah.
Because most people in active outbound sales will tell you, if I can just get a conversation, I'll get the sale 80% of the time. We don't have a sales problem, we have a conversation problem. But that conversation needs to come organically, it needs to come naturally.
1,000%. 1,000%. I can't wait to read this book. I cannot wait to read this book. Can I be a licensee?
Well, absolutely. Speak to my agent.
Very good answer. All right. Well, Bob Gentle, this has been totally fantastic. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Tell people what resources can we leave them with? Where should we send them? How can they get connected and stay connected to more Bob Gentle brilliance?
So last time I spoke about the Personal Brand Business Roadmap. This time I'm going to send you, David, a link to something called the Reach Daily Sales Ritual. And
great.
It's 5 things, only 5 things. You do these 5 things 10 minutes a day. Sales take care of themselves. It's really straightforward. And it's called a ritual for a very specific reason.
Yeah.
You don't need to think. You don't need to be creative. You just create a space, sacred space, do thing 1, thing 2, thing 3, thing 4, thing 5. And the compound effect becomes your friend very, very quickly. If people are interested in what I'm doing, I have a podcast called Building Your Leader Brand. Very easy to find. And I'm on pretty much every social media platform at Bob Gentle, but my favorite is LinkedIn.
And I hear you also occasionally will have handsome bald men as your guest.
You and I are speaking again for volume 2.
Oh my God.
Next week. Next
and
Thursday.
our first conversation was so much fun. So we're just going to keep the love fest going here. We're going to keep the love train going full steam ahead. Bob Gentle, you are an amazing human being. You're one of the good guys in this business, and I'm proud to call you a friend. Thank you for sharing your brilliance with us.
Well, right back at you. I really appreciate your platform, and I never take that for granted. Thank you very much.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.